It was 3:15 a.m. on a stormy Tuesday when Nurse Quinn Vance finally clocked out. Her scrubs were soaked, her hands shaking, and she'd just been fired. She thought her career was over, but she never made it to the parking lot. The automatic doors slammed open, and the hospital went completely silent. 6 towering men in full tactical gear stormed inside. These weren't police. They were Navy SEALs. And they weren't here for a doctor. They were here for her. The lead officer stopped in front of the trembling nurse, dropped to one knee, and said a single word that would change everything. "Ma'am, what secret are you hiding? Why would the deadliest warriors on earth bow to a woman who spent her life cleaning bedpans?" It was 3:15 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday when Nurse Quinn Vance finally punched out. The fluorescent lights above Mercy General Hospital flickered weakly, humming a tired monotone that had been the soundtrack of her life for 2 decades. Her scrubs, once crisp and white, were now soaked in the residue of blood, antiseptics, and the invisible weight of trauma. Her hands shook, not from exhaustion alone, but from the sinking feeling that her career had just ended. 3 long hours earlier, Marcus Sterling, the hospital's newly appointed chief of administration, had summoned her to the cramped break room. At 32, he looked younger than most of the residents Quinn had trained, yet somehow more imposing. His expensive suit was immaculate, but his eyes held no experience of life outside budget reports and policy memos. "We need to talk about the Henderson case," he had said, his manicured finger tapping the tablet like a gavel. "You bypassed authorization. High-cost medication. Do you understand the consequences?" Quinn's voice was raspy from 12 hours of trauma care. Mr. Henderson was going septic, homeless, uninsured. If I hadn't administered the antibiotic, he wouldn't have made it past the hour mark. Sterling sighed theatrically. "We don't care about your good intentions. Mercy General is a business. You're a liability." That word had cut through her like a scalpel. Liability. After 30 years of devotion, countless nights spent holding the hands of dying strangers, after seeing more human suffering than Sterling could ever imagine, she was reduced to a single word. The confrontation ended as she knew it would. Her badge handed over, her locker emptied, her identity as Quinn Vance, RN, head trauma nurse, stripped away like old bandages. She walked the silent hallways, avoiding the eyes of her colleagues. Nurses she had mentored for years, doctors she had assisted in grueling 12-hour surgeries. They all looked down at charts or screens, unwilling to witness the humiliation of someone who had dedicated their life to care and compassion. By the time she reached the lobby, the rain outside was hammering against the glass, turning the city into a blur of gray and neon. Chicago never felt colder than at that moment. Quinn's tote bag held the remnants of her life, a photo of her daughter away at college, a stethoscope gifted by her late father, and her own sense of self-worth that now felt tattered and fragile. She barely noticed the security guard, Arthur, a kind older man with decades of experience behind those sliding doors. "Rough night, Quinn?" he asked softly. She could only whisper back, "You could say that." Her eyes were fixed on the exit when suddenly the ordinary routine of the hospital was violently interrupted. Lights brighter than street lamps cut through the rain outside. 3 massive black SUVs, unmarked and moving with perfect coordination, skidded to a halt in the ambulance bay. The storm seemed to part for them, rain sliding off their armored surfaces as though fearing to touch them. Quinn's heart skipped. She recognized the movement instinctively, the precision, the silent authority. 6 men emerged, built like statues carved from muscle and discipline, clad in tactical gear that gleamed even in the pale lobby lights. They were operators, trained to move with lethal intent. The automatic doors hissed open, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Each step they took echoed like a drumbeat of inevitability. Quinn pressed herself against the wall, gripping her tote bag tightly. Fear, confusion, and a flicker of recognition warred inside her. She didn't know why they were here. She didn't understand how her life had just pivoted from being over to being caught in the center of something much bigger. Arthur reached for his radio, but the leader of the group, tall, bearded, with a scar slicing through his eyebrow, did not raise a weapon. He moved with a calm so absolute that Sterling himself, the man who had declared her a liability just minutes earlier, tripped back, stunned into silence. The leader's piercing blue eyes locked onto Quinn, and in that instant the world around her blurred. "Ma'am," he said, deep, gruff, and unwavering. The single word carried decades of command, respect, and something else, something she hadn't felt in years, not since Afghanistan. And in that moment, Quinn realized her life was far from over. The moment the armored SUVs screeched to a stop outside Mercy General Hospital, the ordinary rhythm of the night shattered. In the dimly lit ambulance bay, puddles reflected the flashing emergency lights, casting distorted shadows across the concrete. The 6 men emerged in perfect synchronization, their movements so precise that it seemed rehearsed, yet instinctual, a deadly ballet born from years of discipline and battlefield experience. Quinn watched them silently, every muscle in her body tensed, her pulse hammering in her ears. Something about their presence demanded attention. These weren't ordinary law enforcement officers or even paramilitary contractors. They were operators, and Quinn knew it instinctively. Every step, every gesture, even the way they scanned the area with rapid, methodical precision, spoke of missions executed in war zones rather than city streets. The leader of the group, the tall man with the scar slicing through his eyebrow, moved ahead. His voice cut through the sound of the rain and wind with surgical clarity. "Clear the area. Emergency extraction in progress." Hospital staff froze. Nurses who had spent years walking the tightrope of life and death stared at the tactical team with wide, uncomprehending eyes. The front desk receptionist, normally glued to her computer, fumbled with the phone, dialing in vain for confirmation that this was standard protocol. The truth was, no one had ever seen anything like this. Quinn's mind raced. Why were they here? How had they found her? And most importantly, what did they want? She glanced at Arthur, the security guard, who shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, I don't think these are hospital police," he murmured, a mix of awe and fear in his tone. The operators moved inside, their boots silent against the polished floor. Each carried specialized equipment, and their eyes were always scanning, analyzing. They communicated with small hand signals, almost imperceptible to anyone who didn't know the language. The leader paused near the elevators, signaling for 2 of his men to secure the stairwells. Containment established, no entry or exit without clearance. As the team fanned out, Quinn noticed something else: timing. The hospital's security cameras, automatic doors, even the janitorial staff's night cleaning schedule. They moved as if all of it had been predicted and accounted for. This wasn't a random raid. This was precise, surgical, and targeted. The scarred leader finally approached Quinn, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. "Nurse Quinn Vance?" he asked, his tone firm but not unkind. Quinn nodded, her throat dry, her hand still clutching the strap of her tote bag. "Yes." "Who are you?" He gestured to his team. "Operators, tasked with retrieving you. There's no time for explanations here. You need to move now." The words hit her like a punch. Retrieve her? For what purpose? She wanted to ask questions, to understand, but the sheer authority emanating from him silenced her instincts. There was no arguing, no hesitation. Every second spent debating could be fatal, and she felt that deep in her bones. Marcus Sterling, the hospital administrator who had humiliated her just moments earlier, stepped forward. "Wait! What?" What is this?" His voice cracked, revealing both fear and confusion. The scarred leader ignored him, his focus entirely on Quinn. "Ma'am, step forward," he commanded. The subtle weight behind the words left no room for negotiation. Quinn's hesitation lasted only a heartbeat before she obeyed, her mind a whirlwind of questions and fear. As she moved toward the team, the operators flanked her, a protective wall that felt both reassuring and intimidating. The rain outside pounded harder, masking their quiet footsteps, as if nature itself was conspiring to cover their movements. The elevators opened automatically, their soft chime almost gentle compared to the intensity radiating from the team. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The interior of the SUVs was not what Quinn expected. Far from cramped or uncomfortable, each vehicle was outfitted with advanced communication systems, medical supplies, and defensive measures she couldn't even begin to identify. Monitors displayed satellite feeds, building schematics, and real-time security footage from the hospital and surrounding streets. One of the operators, a woman whose calm demeanor rivaled Quinn's own in high-pressure situations, slid over a tablet. "You'll need to memorize this route," she said, voice steady. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, met Quinn's. Timing is everything. One misstep, 1 second too long, and the extraction fails. Quinn's mind raced. Extraction? What danger could require this level of precision? She had faced chaos before, code blues, multi-car accidents, mass casualty events, but nothing on this scale, nothing that carried this kind of unseen threat. The leader finally spoke again, his voice low, steady, and commanding. "We've been tracking threats that specifically target you. You've been off the grid for decades in their eyes, but we've maintained observation. Tonight, your cover is ending." Quinn's stomach churned. "Cover?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Your past," he said simply. "The one you left behind. It's coming for you now, and it won't stop." Every instinct in her body screamed danger, but also clarity. She realized this wasn't about a hospital protocol violation or even her personal safety. It was about survival. And the stakes were higher than anything she had faced in her career, in any battlefield or ER. The SUV doors closed with a soft thud, sealing her inside with the operators. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, time seemed to stretch, every second charged with anticipation. Quinn gripped her tote bag, glanced at the scarred leader, and knew one undeniable truth. Her life, as she had known it, was over. But what was about to begin would test every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage she had ever possessed. By the time the convoy of SUVs reached the outskirts of the city, the storm had transformed into a relentless downpour. Rain hammered the vehicles with unyielding force, obscuring vision and turning the highways into slick, reflective mirrors of red and white lights. Inside, Quinn sat rigid, flanked by operators whose calm demeanor was unnerving. Every one of them had a role, every movement choreographed down to the millisecond, yet they moved as if anticipating unseen threats around each bend. The scarred leader, whom Quinn now knew as Commander Ellis, tapped a finger against the dashboard. Satellite feed shows multiple tails. "We're not just being watched, we're being hunted." His voice carried no panic, only measured urgency, which somehow made the situation even more terrifying. Quinn swallowed hard. "Hunted? By who?" Her voice cracked despite her effort to remain composed. Ellis's blue eyes met hers. "A faction from your past. We anticipated some interference, but their persistence is unprecedented. They won't give up, not until they have you." A chill ran down Quinn's spine. The words hit like ice. She had spent years burying her past, building a quiet, orderly life, working the night shifts, staying invisible. And now, those very years of invisibility had only delayed this inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, the first warning appeared on the HUD in front of Ellis. Red markers flashed across a digital map. 2 vehicles, approaching from the northeast, moving at high speed, he said, scanning rapidly. Weapons visible. Probable intercept attempt. One of the operators, a wiry man with a scar along his jawline, adjusted his headset. ETA 3 minutes. They're coordinating. Look at their patterns. This isn't random. Quinn's pulse accelerated. She leaned forward, trying to understand the scale of the threat. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't a simple attack. It was a hunt, calculated and relentless, targeting her with precision. Ellis's hand moved to a panel beside him, fingers dancing across the touchscreen. Prepare countermeasures. Non-lethal until necessary. Extraction is a priority. The operators responded with practiced efficiency. One secured the rear cameras, while another prepared deployable smoke canisters from the side compartments. The SUV's reinforced windows and advanced suspension allowed them to navigate treacherous roads at speed, but the rain was a wild card. One wrong maneuver and the mission could be compromised. As they approached a narrow overpass, the first assailant vehicles came into view. 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, engines growling with menace, cut in front and alongside the convoy. The operators acted without hesitation. Smoke canisters hissed, releasing thick clouds that shrouded the convoy. Defensive maneuvers executed flawlessly. The vehicles weaving and accelerating, each turn precise enough to prevent a collision despite the storm. Quinn gripped the seat, her knuckles white. She realized she had never seen this level of coordination outside military operations. Every operator moved with an instinctive awareness that bordered on preternatural. The wiry, scarred man, now identified as Lieutenant Kane, checked the side mirror, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. They're persistent, predicting our maneuvers, but they're underestimating the terrain. Ellis nodded, eyes fixed on the digital map. Take the northern bypass. Gravel section, reduce traction for pursuers, give them an edge they can't handle. The convoy executed the maneuver seamlessly. Tires skidded, rain slicked, gravel flew, yet the operators remained composed. Quinn realized that in this moment, training, experience, and nerves of steel were the only things standing between life and death. Inside the SUV, the operator's professionalism contrasted sharply with Quinn's spiraling thoughts. She remembered the faces of hospital staff, the ones she had reassured during countless emergencies. If she didn't survive this night, would anyone even understand the life she had hidden? Would her past forever remain a mystery to those who knew only Nurse Quinn? The assailants' vehicles attempted another intercept, trying to flank the convoy from both sides. This time, Kane deployed small, high-intensity light flares to disorient them. The rain reflected each flare, creating a surreal, almost cinematic display of chaos, with shadows flickering violently across the inside of the SUV. Quinn felt the adrenaline surge, but alongside it, a cold clarity. Her mind, trained for emergencies and split-second decisions, began analyzing patterns. Observing Ellis and Kane, she noticed their subtle signals, their anticipatory movements. She understood for the first time that survival depended not just on brute strength or weapons, but on perception, strategy, and timing. The chase reached a critical junction when one of the assailants' vehicles attempted to ram the convoy from behind. Ellis reacted instantly, steering sharply while Kane deployed an electromagnetic pulse to disable the SUV's engine temporarily. The pursuing vehicle swerved violently, spinning out of control into the stormy night. The operators didn't celebrate. There was no time for triumph. They maintained formation, eyes scanning every potential threat. Quinn, breathless, felt the weight of what had just occurred. These were not amateurs, and the danger was not a mere abstract concept. It was tangible, immediate, and lethal. As the convoy finally approached a secluded safe house on the outskirts of the city, the rain began to lessen. Lightning flashed, illuminating the operators' faces, their expressions stoic, disciplined, but alert. Ellis finally turned to Quinn. "You made it," he said, voice low. "But this is only the beginning. That was the first wave. More will follow, and they won't stop. We have hours, maybe minutes to prepare, and you must be ready for everything." Quinn exhaled, the storm outside a fading echo of the chaos she had just survived. But the realization settled heavily in her chest. Tonight had marked the emergence of a threat she could no longer run from. And from this point forward, every second, every choice would determine whether she lived or became another casualty of her past. The safe house sat on the edge of the city, tucked into a small, fog-draped industrial district that had long been abandoned. Rainwater dripped from rusted eaves, pooling in uneven cracks of the concrete lot. A faint hum of distant traffic was the only reminder that the city beyond still thrived, oblivious to the night's lethal events. Inside, the air was tense. The scent of damp metal mixed with the faint odor of antiseptic from Quinn's lingering presence, her mind still clinging to fragments of her old life. She stepped cautiously, taking in the dimly lit interior. Reinforced walls, surveillance monitors, and tactical gear lined every corner. This was not a residence. It was a command center disguised as a hideout. Ellis moved deliberately, his hands flicking switches and adjusting screens as he spoke in measured tones. "We need a complete threat assessment before we can plan our next steps. Satellite feed indicates 3 more vehicles were dispatched after the ones we encountered. ETA to our location, 27 minutes. Quinn's heart sank. 27 minutes. That was all the time they had to prepare. Every second mattered, and failure wasn't an option. A young operator, barely out of his 20s but with a precision that defied his age, keyed commands into a secure tablet. Thermal imaging shows movement on the perimeter, possible scouts. They're probing for patterns, testing our response. They know we're here." Ellis nodded. "Which means they have intel on us. And Quinn..." He paused, letting his gaze meet hers. "They're specifically after you. Nothing else is a distraction. You're the target, and the motive runs deeper than simple revenge." Quinn felt a surge of anxiety. She had spent years compartmentalizing her past, believing she could bury it safely. But now, the walls of that compartment were crumbling. Faces, events, and secrets she had long kept hidden began flooding her mind. The incident in Berlin, the extraction in Prague, the coded messages she had intercepted and destroyed. Each memory was a shadow, and now those shadows had teeth. The operators moved efficiently, setting up perimeter defenses. Motion sensors, tripwires, and automated drones were deployed within minutes. Each device hummed with quiet precision, scanning the surrounding industrial wasteland for intruders. The storm outside had slowed, but the wet asphalt reflected every light, creating a mirrored labyrinth that would make approaching the house treacherous. Quinn wandered to the central table, where maps were spread out like a tactical battlefield. Each location was marked with timestamps, potential escape routes, and high-risk zones. She traced a finger along a route she recognized from her past assignments, her instincts kicking in despite her fear. "Your experience is an asset," Ellis said quietly, noticing her movement. "You understand patterns, probabilities. That's why you're alive right now. But tonight, survival will demand more than instinct. It will require anticipation." A sudden beep interrupted the conversation. Kane's voice crackled through the intercom, northern perimeter. 2 figures approaching, camouflaged, moving fast. Visibility is low, but thermal readings confirm they're armed. ETA 8 minutes. Quinn froze. 8 minutes. That was less than the time it would take to process the situation. She felt the adrenaline spike, her pulse matching the rhythmic blinking of the monitors. The safe house, despite its reinforced walls and tactical sophistication, felt suddenly fragile. Ellis gestured toward a reinforced door at the back. Move to defensive positions. Stay low. They'll try multiple angles. Remember, extraction remains a priority. Do not engage unless necessary. The operators dispersed with precision, their movements a silent choreography. Quinn followed instinctively, crouching behind a metal console. She observed their techniques, hand signals, scanning patterns, layered defensive coverage. Even in the moments of waiting, tension was palpable. A predator crouched in shadows, anticipating every move. Time seemed to dilate. Minutes stretched into eternities as the first faint noise reached the safe house. Footsteps, irregular and cautious, echoing against metal and concrete. Quinn's eyes scanned the monitors. The intruders were methodical, circling the building, probing for weaknesses. One operator whispered into his comms, barely audible over the storm's residual noise. "They're testing our patterns. Wait for the signal. Wait." Ellis's eyes never left the screens. Focus, anticipate, predict. Every second counts. One mistake and this night ends differently. Quinn clenched her fists, heart racing. She realized that this was more than a physical battle. It was psychological warfare. Her past, once hidden, was now weaponized against her. Every suppressed memory, every forgotten assignment, now demanded immediate attention. The intruders made their first move. Small explosive charges placed strategically along the perimeter. The resulting sparks illuminated shadows that danced across the walls. Operators responded immediately, neutralizing the threat with silent precision. Each interaction, each reaction was a test of their coordination, and Quinn absorbed every detail, every pattern, storing it mentally. Ellis finally turned to her. "Listen carefully. This is the first wave of an organized effort. They'll adapt, change tactics, and escalate. You must be ready, not just physically but mentally. If they break you here, they've won, but we will not let that happen." Quinn nodded, determination settling in. The storm outside had cleared, leaving an eerie calm. But inside the safe house, the tension was thick, the threat imminent, and the clock ticking relentlessly toward the next confrontation. As the chapter closed, the safe house felt less like a refuge and more like a chessboard. Every piece, every move, and every decision would determine survival. And Quinn, once a quiet observer of life, now understood she had become the key player in a lethal game, one where a single misstep could prove fatal. The tension inside the safe house was almost unbearable. Every operator had taken their position, eyes glued to monitors and scanning scopes. Outside, the night was deceptively quiet, broken only by the distant rumble of the city and the occasional drip of residual rainwater from the roof. But beneath that calm, danger was closing in. At precisely 1:42 a.m., the first alert triggered. Motion sensors along the eastern perimeter picked up movement, small, calculated steps, methodical and cautious. Quinn's gaze snapped to the monitors. Two figures were approaching, dressed in dark tactical gear, faces obscured. They moved like trained professionals, deliberately testing the house's defenses. Ellis whispered, his voice a razor of calm focus. "They're scouting. Don't engage yet. Let them commit." Quinn's pulse quickened. She remembered similar situations from her past assignments, ambushes, traps, and lethal encounters. Her instincts sharpened, but this time, the stakes were deeply personal. The intruders weren't just mercenaries. They were here for her. Every move, every step they took, confirmed it. Kane's voice came through the intercom. They're splitting. One heading north, one circling west. Likely attempting to flank. ETA to breach point, 2 minutes. Quinn crouched behind the reinforced console, scanning the live feed of thermal imaging. The two operatives moved in perfect synchronization, their movements choreographed. They were not improvising. They had done this before. Every shadow they approached, every corner they checked, revealed their training. Suddenly, the northern intruder deployed a small device, a high-tech breaching charge. A muted explosion rocked the perimeter, sending sparks flying. The reinforced wall absorbed most of the impact, but it was enough to test the defenses. Operators responded instantly, activating automated countermeasures. Small drones whirred to life, their infrared sensors tracking movement along the perimeter. Ellis issued precise commands. Focus on containment. Do not let them enter. Channel them to the traps. Quinn's breath caught as she realized the sophistication of their attack. Each charge, each maneuver, was designed not just to breach the safe house, but to disorient and isolate them. This was a test of strategy, patience, and composure. Minutes passed like hours. Every operator knew their role, but even the best coordination could be undone by a single unpredictable move. Quinn's mind raced, recalling encrypted patterns and escape strategies she had studied but never thought she'd apply in real life. Her hands moved almost instinctively, assisting with communications, predicting the intruder's next steps. The western intruder advanced along a blind spot near the storage unit. Quinn saw it on the thermal feed and immediately alerted Ellis. Western flank, moving toward the blind spot. Suggest deploying a net trap now. Ellis acted without hesitation. Net deployed. Stand by for confirmation. Seconds later, the intruder tripped over the net trap, momentarily immobilized. Kane's team moved in, neutralizing the threat without firing a shot. The other intruder, noticing the sudden movement on the western side, hesitated. This split-second hesitation gave Quinn and the operators a critical advantage. Ellis's voice cut through the tension. Quinn, this is your moment. Their focus is divided. Use it to gather intelligence on their motives. Check comms traffic, drone feeds. Find out who sent them. Quinn tapped into the secure network, decrypting fragments of intercepted communication. She found what she feared, a chain of command linking the attackers directly to her past operations. Names, dates, mission codes, all pointing to a carefully orchestrated plan targeting her specifically. Her stomach tightened. They had studied her history, understood her skills, and anticipated her reactions. This was not random. This was vengeance engineered with precision. Another explosion erupted closer this time, east perimeter. The second intruder had triggered a hidden breaching charge. Sparks flew, concrete dust fell, and alarms blared. Operators sprang into action, creating a containment perimeter. Quinn's heart raced, but she stayed focused, analyzing every movement, every reaction. The intruder attempted to penetrate a reinforced window using a thermal cutter. Quinn noticed the faint glow, signaling the tool in use. Northern window, thermal cutter active. Deploy countermeasure, she commanded, her voice calm but urgent. Seconds later, a rapid response drone intercepted the cutter with electromagnetic pulses, disabling the device. The intruder cursed under his breath, momentarily stunned. Quinn felt a surge of satisfaction, but knew the confrontation was far from over. Ellis leaned over her shoulder. They're skilled, but we have the advantage. Knowledge of the environment, anticipation, and strategy. Don't underestimate them. One mistake and it's over. The intruders adjusted tactics, attempting a simultaneous breach from the roof using grappling hooks. Operators reacted with precision, firing warning shots and deploying electrified trip lines. The roofside intruder hesitated, reconsidering the risk. Every move, every hesitation played into Quinn's hands. As the clock approached 2:10 a.m., the first confrontation reached its peak intensity. Sparks flew, drones buzzed, alarms screamed, and tactical maneuvers unfolded like a deadly dance. Quinn, hidden behind the console, felt a mixture of adrenaline and focus. Her past and present collided in that moment, forcing her to adapt, anticipate, and act decisively. Finally, after 28 excruciating minutes, the intruders retreated, vanishing into the industrial night from which they had emerged. No shots fired at the operators, no casualties, but the message was clear. This was only the beginning. Ellis exhaled, tension easing slightly, first wave contained. But they'll return, and they'll be smarter next time. We need to prepare. Now. Quinn's mind raced, processing every detail from the encounter. Every movement, every tactic, every flaw observed would be crucial for the next confrontation. She realized that surviving the night was no longer enough. They had to outthink their attackers entirely. The first confrontation ended, but the war inside the safe house had only just begun. Outside, the night remained calm, but Quinn knew that silence was temporary, and the real storm was yet to arrive. The morning after the first confrontation brought a deceptive calm. Sunlight streamed through reinforced blinds, illuminating the safe house in a cold, sterile glow. Operators moved quietly, checking equipment, scanning feeds, and recalibrating surveillance drones. But Quinn knew the storm was far from over. The attackers had left traces, subtle, almost imperceptible, but for someone trained, they told a story. Ellis approached her, tablet in hand. "Look at this," he said, swiping through high-resolution footage. Footprints near the perimeter, minimal but deliberate. They knew the terrain. Every movement was calculated. Quinn studied the images carefully. The footprints weren't ordinary. They suggested weight distribution, tactical gear, even a possible injury in the left knee of one operative. She traced the faint scuff marks, mentally reconstructing the path they had taken to approach the safe house. "They're leaving breadcrumbs," Quinn murmured, her voice low but precise. "Not by accident. They want us to see them, or mislead us. Classic psychological tactic. But the pattern, it's familiar." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Familiar how?" Quinn tapped the screen. "During my last field assignment in Berlin, we encountered operatives with identical movement signatures, trained in Eastern European tactical units. These are highly disciplined, not freelance mercenaries. Whoever sent them has resources and a playbook." The operators began compiling every fragment of evidence: drone thermal scans, motion detector logs, residual dust from breaching charges, and faint chemical traces on the perimeter walls. Quinn noticed something that even Ellis initially missed: a tiny fiber caught on a security spike, barely visible under magnification. She leaned in, magnifying the fiber. Synthetic blend reinforced with Kevlar threads, military grade, rare but not impossible to trace. "Someone wanted us to miss it, but we didn't." Kane joined them, frowning. "Do we have any leads on where they might regroup?" "They vanished quickly, with no trace of transport." Quinn shook her head. "They could have multiple extraction points. The pattern suggests familiarity with urban terrain, likely pre-mapped routes. But there's one anomaly." She pointed to the overlay of thermal images. "See here? A narrow alley leading to an abandoned warehouse 2 blocks east. It's slightly off the main escape route, almost as if they want someone to follow this trail." Ellis exhaled, a mixture of tension and respect in his voice. "You think they're trying to lure us?" Quinn nodded. "It's a possibility. Or they're testing our response time. Either way, we need to anticipate, not react." By 10:15 a.m., the safe house was a hive of activity. Operators ran simulations, replicating the intruders' movements in real time. Drones swept the surrounding alleys, and thermal feeds were layered over satellite imagery to predict possible regrouping points. Quinn led the effort, using her tactical experience to anticipate the intruder's next steps. At 11:02 a.m., a breakthrough arrived. One of the drones picked up a faint signal, encrypted comm chatter in a frequency rarely used outside high-level operations. The chatter was fragmented, but certain keywords were discernible: mission codes, locations, and timestamps. Quinn immediately began decrypting, working with Ellis to reconstruct a partial map of the intruder's next probable moves. "They're planning something," Quinn muttered, eyes scanning the decrypted data. "This isn't a hit and run, it's coordinated. They're targeting something or someone within the city." Kane frowned. Could it be us again? Quinn's expression hardened. Undoubtedly. They've identified patterns, analyzed our responses, and now they're escalating. We're dealing with operators who anticipate not just movement, but decision-making. This is advanced psychological warfare. As the morning wore on, Quinn traced additional clues: footwear impressions, faint chemical residues from smoke charges, and unusual energy readings near city infrastructure suggested a potential staging area. The operators deployed micro-drones to sweep potential points, feeding real-time data back to the command console. At 12:47 p.m., a critical discovery emerged. A camera hidden within an abandoned building recorded movement at 2:04 a.m., the same time as the first confrontation. The footage revealed the intruder's exit route, confirming Quinn's theory about the alley and warehouse. But more importantly, it revealed faces, partially obscured, but enough for pattern recognition. Ellis leaned in, voice low. "Can you identify them?" Quinn studied each frame, cross-referencing databases, partial matches, likely Eastern European-trained operatives, ex-military. "Names will take time, but we have operational signatures. That's enough for now." The day progressed with relentless analysis. Every trace, every thermal anomaly, every intercepted comm signal built a mosaic, a map of intent and capability. Quinn felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that missing even the smallest clue could result in disaster. By 3:30 p.m., the Safe House Command Center had transformed into a nerve center of strategic anticipation. Quinn reviewed the compiled intel, connecting the hidden trails left by the intruders to possible future targets. She realized the confrontation was far from random. It was part of a broader plan, meticulously designed to test, provoke, and manipulate them. Finally, at 4:12 p.m., Quinn gathered the team. Listen carefully. The first confrontation was just a prelude. The intruders are professional, calculated, and adaptive. They've left trails, but also traps. Our job is to predict, prepare, and intercept before they strike again. Every detail we uncover matters. The hidden trail is our advantage. Use it wisely. Ellis nodded, his face reflecting the gravity of the moment. Understood. We move with precision. Quinn exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. But inside, she knew that each discovery, each clue, was merely the surface. The real confrontation was still ahead, and the hidden trail would lead them deeper into the heart of danger. The first clues had been uncovered, the operators were aligned, and the hunt had begun in earnest. The shadow of the intruders lingered over the city, but now Quinn and her team had the knowledge and the determination to follow the trail wherever it led. The late afternoon brought a restless tension to the safe house. Quinn stood by the floor-to-ceiling monitors reviewing every movement detected by the micro-drones. Each image, each thermal imprint carried a story, but interpreting it required patience, precision, and experience. She knew the intruders were leaving more than physical traces, they were leaving psychological ones, subtle manipulations designed to provoke mistakes. Ellis approached with a report, his voice quiet but urgent. "We've intercepted communications again. slightly different frequency coded pattern. Whoever they are, they adapt fast. They've started using decoys. Quinn's eyes narrowed. Decoys? Yes, Ellis said, pointing at the thermal overlays. Multiple movements, some of which appear tactical, but when analyzed, they lead nowhere. They're testing our focus, trying to scatter resources. Quinn exhaled, a mix of frustration and calculation. This is advanced misdirection. They're professionals, not amateurs. Each false lead is meant to teach us something about our pattern recognition, our response timing. We need to anticipate the next layer, not chase shadows. By 5:12 p.m., the team had mapped the decoy routes. Footprints diverged from known paths, some doubled back, others disappeared into seemingly empty corridors. Quinn traced the movements mentally, reconstructing a possible intent behind each deviation. The intruders weren't just planning attacks, they were orchestrating a psychological narrative. Kane, standing beside her, glanced at the projections. It's almost like they want us to overthink. Every path, every anomaly. It's a test. Quinn nodded. Exactly. And the interesting part, the decoys tell us more than the actual paths. The intruder's selection of false routes reveals their priorities, their understanding of our analysis methods. We can use that against them. Meanwhile, Ellis had been cross-referencing the intercepted chatter with known operatives and previous incidents. Some of the code phrases match past Eastern European covert operations. But these patterns have evolved. Faster execution, more misdirection. Whoever is behind this has access to both intelligence and tactical networks. At 6:03 p.m. a breakthrough occurred. A micro-drone, following a secondary route suggested by the decoys, captured a fleeting shadow on a fire escape. The figure moved deliberately, scanning surroundings before vanishing into the night. Quinn froze, zooming in on the grainy footage. "That's no decoy," she said, voice sharp. "Look at the gait, the shoulder load, the pace, trained operator. Likely reconnaissance for a larger movement." Ellis processed the observation. "Do we know where they went?" Quinn shook her head. "Not yet, but based on thermal residue and movement vectors, they're heading toward a utility corridor connecting to the main transit grid. It's clever. They're using overlooked infrastructure to remain invisible. Anyone unaware would assume they disappeared into the city." As night approached, Quinn reviewed satellite overlays and city maps, connecting the hidden corridors, back alleys, and service tunnels into a comprehensive route analysis. Every potential staging area, every obscure exit, and every high-traffic location was examined. By 8:15 p.m., a clearer picture emerged. The intruders weren't acting randomly. They were converging toward a central target, one Quinn had not yet identified. But the pattern of movement, combined with the decoy trails, suggested urgency. They were moving to strike, but what or whom remained unknown. Kane leaned over her shoulder. "Are we ready to intercept?" Quinn paused. "Not yet. Interceptions without full intel could play into their hands. They want a reaction. They provoking us, testing our thresholds. We need patience. We follow the echo of their actions, not just the immediate trace." Ellis added, "One thing's certain, their communication is evolving. Each message, each misdirection, each false trail, they learn from us in real time. This is dynamic operational warfare." Quinn nodded grimly, turning back to the monitors. Her mind raced, connecting patterns, anticipating moves, and predicting potential outcomes. Every anomaly, every misleading trail, every micro-clue contributed to a narrative that only someone with her experience could decode. At 10:02 p.m., an encrypted message broke through, brief and fragmented. The content was almost meaningless in isolation, but Quinn recognized the markers immediately. It was a confirmation of the next phase of operations. They had begun moving. She gathered the operators. They're advancing. The decoys were just a rehearsal. Now they're mobilizing toward their objective. We follow methodically. No unnecessary exposure. Every move counts. We anticipate, we adapt, and we control the narrative. That is how we counter deception. By midnight, the safe house was a hub of calculated anticipation. Operators monitored the hidden trails, cross-referenced movements with city maps, and analyzed potential exits. Quinn remained at the center, orchestrating the effort with the calm intensity of a field commander. As the city slept, shadows moved in deliberate precision. The intruders were executing their plan, leaving a trail meant to mislead, manipulate, and test. But Quinn and her team were ready. They had decoded the echoes of deception, and now they were prepared to turn the intruders' strategy against them. The night was far from over, and the real confrontation loomed closer. Every hidden path, every misleading cue, every subtle trace would lead them deeper into the heart of the operation. And Quinn knew that understanding the echoes of deception was the only way to survive what was coming next. The night air was thick with anticipation as Quinn and her team monitored the city from their elevated vantage point. Every streetlight, alleyway, and shadowed corridor became a potential clue, a fragment of the puzzle the intruders were leaving behind. The city itself had become a chessboard, with invisible pieces moving deliberately across the board, each step calculated to provoke, mislead, or conceal. At 12:47 a.m., Ellis intercepted a new transmission. The frequency was slightly altered, the encryption more sophisticated. "They're switching protocols," he noted, "likely to bypass our surveillance algorithms. Whoever they are, they adapt instantly." Quinn leaned over the monitors, analyzing the spectral overlays. "Notice the pattern? It's not random. They're creating a web, multiple entry points, redundant paths, layered misdirection. Each move forces us to split our attention, to anticipate multiple outcomes simultaneously." Kane, tracing the latest movement vectors on the interactive map, frowned. "But what's the end game? Every path converges, then diverges again. It's like they're herding us towards something, but what?" Quinn's eyes scanned the network of shadows and light. "Exactly. The divergences are intentional. Each fork in the trail is a test of our pattern recognition. They want to see how quickly we can synthesize information, where we hesitate, where we commit resources unnecessarily. This is psychological warfare as much as tactical movement. By 1:15 a.m., a micro-drone captured activity near a rarely used service tunnel behind a defunct industrial complex. Thermal imaging revealed multiple operatives moving with disciplined precision. One carried a briefcase-sized object, while another adjusted what appeared to be a makeshift tracking device. Ellis studied the images. "It's a payload, but we still don't know its target. They're protecting it, keeping it mobile, and ensuring it remains invisible to standard reconnaissance." Quinn traced the shadows across her map. "They're moving from point A to point B along an unconventional path, through abandoned infrastructure, subways, and service tunnels. It's designed to avoid detection, but every choice they make leaves a residual signature. We read the traces, not just the actions. By 2:03 a.m., a sudden anomaly appeared. A street camera caught an unexpected figure, a lone operative, stationary, observing the movements of the main group. Quinn froze. "They're being watched, or they're watching us. Could be an embedded scout, a sentinel ensuring that any interference triggers a controlled response." Kane noted the timestamp. 2 hours ago we estimated movement toward the industrial sector. Now there's a stationary observer. That changes our interception calculus. Quinn nodded. Precisely. They're layering intelligence on intelligence. Every decoy, every real movement, every pause. It's part of a network strategy. We can't react emotionally or impulsively. We anticipate, calculate, and control the narrative. Ellis, cross-referencing known operatives, added another layer of insight. Some of these markers match historical Eastern European operations, but the execution is modern. Real-time adaptive tactics, rapid rerouting, multi-node coordination. Whoever is leading this knows our capabilities almost as well as we do. By 3:22 a.m., Quinn initiated a calculated response. Small teams were deployed along predicted corridors, blending with the urban environment while remaining unseen. Each operator had strict instructions: observe, document, avoid engagement until full confirmation of target identity. The city seemed to hold its breath. Sirens from distant incidents echoed faintly, indistinct and unrelated. But Quinn knew better. "Noise pollution," she murmured. "A natural camouflage for their movements. They rely on our assumption that chaos is random when in fact it's structured." At 4 a.m., one of the micro-drones captured a critical moment, the payload being transferred to a secondary operative who then disappeared into a concealed service shaft. The imagery was grainy, but Quinn's trained eye discerned the object's outline. Highly sensitive, potentially volatile, but mobile. Kane voiced the obvious concern. "If that's what I think it is, we have minutes to prevent disaster." Quinn's expression remained calm. "We have options. Panic is the enemy. Decoding the web, predicting the convergence, and controlling the intervention point, that is our path to neutralization." By 5:15 a.m., patterns emerged. The intruder's web was tightening, converging toward a central nexus, a location carefully selected to maximize operational advantage and minimize exposure. Quinn and her team were poised at calculated nodes, observing, anticipating, and coordinating in real time. Ellis noticed another anomaly. An encrypted message had been transmitted to an external satellite uplink. "They're coordinating with external support. This is bigger than we estimated. Could be multi-city, possibly international." Quinn absorbed the information, her mind reconstructing every thread of the network. "It confirms our suspicion. They've built a distributed operation where each node functions autonomously, yet contributes to a larger objective. We're not just intercepting movements, we're decoding an entire operational architecture." By 6 a.m., the first hints of dawn cast shadows across the city, revealing paths that had been invisible in the darkness. Quinn's team adjusted positions accordingly. Every decision was data-driven, every step measured, every observation a potential key to unraveling the operation. Kane finally asked the question that had been lingering since the night began. "Do we know the target yet?" Quinn exhaled slowly. "Not fully. But the web is converging. Every movement, every diversion, every decoy leads to the same point. If we remain patient and precise, we will know before they act. And that is when the web becomes our trap, not theirs." The city awoke around them, unaware of the intricate struggle unfolding in its hidden veins. Shadows moved with purpose. Operators remained silent, and Quinn's mind raced ahead, orchestrating a strategy that could turn deception into advantage. As the first light of morning touched the skyline, one truth became clear. The web had tightened, but so had their grip on it. The confrontation was imminent, and Quinn knew that the only way to survive and succeed was to see through the layers of misdirection, anticipate every move, and act with surgical precision. The operation had entered its most dangerous phase, and the real test was just beginning. By 6:45 a.m., the city's pulse had shifted. Commuters, unaware of the intricate operation unfolding beneath the surface, streamed through streets already lit by the early morning sun. Yet, beneath this ordinary rhythm, Quinn and her team were engaged in a high-stakes orchestration that required precision, patience, and absolute control. Every second mattered. Every movement could tip the balance between success and catastrophic failure. Quinn stood over the command table, her eyes scanning the layers of maps, drone feeds, and intelligence logs. The convergence point was now clear, a defunct logistics hub near the river, chosen for its isolation and multiple escape vectors. "They've centralized," Quinn stated, her voice calm but firm. Everything else was a distraction, a series of controlled experiments to measure our reaction speed and operational fidelity. "This is the Nexus." Ellis, monitoring the satellite uplink, nodded. "We've confirmed multiple operatives, at least 6, and they've moved the payload to the southern storage wing. Thermal imaging shows movement patterns consistent with high-value target protocols, minimal exposure, maximum control." Kane adjusted the digital overlays. "All exit routes are monitored. They've layered contingencies, secondary and tertiary paths, booby traps, and surveillance redundancies. If we engage prematurely, we risk triggering a catastrophic chain reaction." Quinn's mind worked several steps ahead. "Our goal isn't just interception. It's containment, observation, and extraction with zero margin for error. We cannot allow impulsive action, or we compromise everything we've built over the last 12 hours. By 7:12 a.m., a low hum signaled the activation of micro-drones that Quinn had strategically placed throughout the perimeter. These drones provided live thermal and optical feeds, triangulating movement with pinpoint accuracy. Each drone acted as an electronic sentinel, silently cataloging the operative's every maneuver. Suddenly a breach was detected. An operative had split from the main group, moving toward the west loading bay. "They're testing our attention again," Quinn observed. "This is a decoy meant to draw us away from the main payload. Remain focused. Predictive analysis indicates he will loop back toward the Nexus." Ellis initiated counter-surveillance protocols. "I'm tracking him. He's moving in predictable vectors. Our anticipation models are holding." Quinn signaled Kane, who deployed a silent interceptor unit through a side access corridor. "Containment without confrontation," she reminded him. "We watch, we record, we wait." By 7:45 a.m., the main group reached the inner sanctum of the logistics hub. Their movements were fluid, synchronized, and deliberate, every operator covering the other's blind spots, every motion calculated to minimize exposure. Quinn's team observed in near silence, analyzing not just their physical actions but behavioral nuances, breathing patterns, micro-pauses, and subtle shifts in posture that revealed stress points. Kane pointed out a significant detail. The operative handling the payload is slightly off-center in his stance, suggesting fatigue or distraction. If we time our intervention precisely, we can gain leverage without confrontation. Quinn's lips pressed together, thinking several moves ahead. This is the window. They are strong and disciplined, but human. Stress accumulates, errors appear. Our task is to identify the exact inflection point, then act with precision, surgically enough to neutralize risk. At 8:05 a.m., one of the peripheral drones detected a new anomaly, a previously unseen operator approaching the hub from the riverbank. Thermal signatures suggested a late arrival collaborator, likely the coordinator who had been relaying encrypted messages via satellite. Ellis grimaced. If he integrates with the main group, containment becomes exponentially more complex. We'll need to adjust the interception nodes immediately. Quinn didn't hesitate. Prepare adaptive engagement. Layer our approach. Containment grids plus extraction teams. Minimal exposure, maximum control. This is no longer about reaction, it's about dominance over the operational space. By 8:30 a.m., the teams were in position. Drones mapped every corridor, every hatch, every ventilation shaft. Each operative had a designated observation sector, and communications were encrypted, silent, and precise. Even the slightest anomaly would be instantly flagged, analyzed, and responded to without delay. At 8:47 a.m., The payload's movements indicated preparation for transit, likely to a nearby river dock where it could be covertly removed. Quinn's predictive analysis confirmed the trajectory matched all previous high-value operations, short, controlled, and precise. Kane whispered, almost to himself, "They're predictable." Controlled, but predictable. Quinn responded, her tone steady, almost clinical. "Yes, they've taught us everything through the night. Their patterns, their decoys, their discipline. Now it's time we use that knowledge. Anticipation is our weapon." By 9:03 a.m., the convergence reached its apex. The payload was secured in the central corridor, operatives forming a defensive perimeter. Quinn's team simultaneously activated electronic containment measures, signal jammers, pressure-sensitive triggers, and silent alarms designed to guide movement toward controlled zones. Ellis monitored the electronic traffic. Communications are scrambling, initiating fallback protocols. They're adaptive, but we have a clear advantage. Their coordination is intact but constrained now. Quinn, calculating each move like a chess master, issued her silent command. Teams moved fluidly through the shadows, maintaining visual contact while remaining undetected. Every step, every breath, every gesture, aligned with a meticulous plan honed over hours of observation. At 9:27 a.m., the final act began. The payload was isolated, contained within a secure zone. Peripheral operatives were guided into observation nodes. The late arrival coordinator was intercepted quietly, his communications terminated without alerting the main group. By 9:45 a.m., the convergence was complete. The web that had tightened through the night was now entirely under control. Every operative accounted for, every potential escape path neutralized, and every contingency mitigated. Quinn exhaled, her eyes scanning the monitors one last time. "This is the moment," she murmured. "The night is over. But precision, patience, and control, these are what ensured success. Every misstep, every decoy, every diversion has been transformed into intelligence we can use." Kane, observing the final data feed, added, "We've turned the web into a trap, not a threat." Quinn's gaze remained steady. "Exactly. In operations like these, anticipation is everything. We've studied their patterns, predicted their convergence, and maintained control at every point. This is how chaos becomes order, how deception becomes leverage, and how a well-executed plan turns a dangerous night into a decisive victory." As the first rays of sunlight bathed the city, the hidden struggle dissolved into the ordinary hum of morning life. Unseen by the public, the night's intricate chessboard had been fully mapped, controlled, and mastered. Every thread of deception had been rewoven into a network of authority and insight. The final convergence had been achieved. The web was no longer theirs, it was Quinn's. By 10:15 a.m., the once tense hub now seemed deceptively calm. The hum of electronics and faint echoes of footsteps replaced the chaos that had dominated the previous hours. Quinn moved deliberately through the command center, reviewing every recorded feed, every intercepted communication, every operative's actions. Nothing would go unnoticed. In operations of this scale, even the smallest anomaly could carry repercussions. Ellis had already compiled preliminary reports. "We've accounted for all personnel," he said, tapping the keyboard with surgical precision. "Payload secured. No breaches, no unexpected communications from external channels." Quinn nodded, though her mind remained several steps ahead. "Good, but containment is only half the story. I want a complete behavioral analysis of each operative. Physical stress, decision latency, micro-expressions, deviations from protocol. We need to understand not just what they did, but why." Kane, leaning over the drone interface, added, "The riverbank operative we intercepted, he's likely a senior coordinator. His communications logs indicate attempts at rerouting instructions, but our intervention preempted them. He won't be able to rebuild the network quickly. Quinn's voice was calm, almost clinical. Exactly. And that's what makes the aftermath more than a victory. It's an intelligence gain. Every move, every attempt at adaptation, every micro-decision is now part of our predictive models. By 10:45 a.m., the initial debriefing was underway. Teams reviewed every surveillance angle. From the loading bays to the ventilation shafts, every pathway had been meticulously recorded and cross-referenced with behavioral data. Patterns emerged: timing inconsistencies, tactical redundancies, subtle stress indicators that had not been visible in real time but were now glaringly evident on playback. Quinn paused at a particular timestamp, 7:52 a.m. The operative handling the payload had made a micro-adjustment to his grip, a minor deviation from trained protocol. "Notice this," Quinn said, pointing to the screen. "This is the first real stress marker. He's attempting to compensate for fatigue while maintaining operational discipline. It's a small window, but this is where extraction or containment becomes possible without alerting the others." Ellis leaned closer. "So, the convergence wasn't perfect from their side either. Even elite operatives have subtle breaking points. This confirms our predictive models. Behavior under pressure is measurable and exploitable. The team works systematically, timestamp by timestamp, analyzing every decision in high definition. By 11:30 a.m., patterns were consolidated into a comprehensive dossier, highlighting both operational strengths and vulnerabilities of the intercepted network. Quinn's phone buzzed, a secure line from headquarters. "Report," she answered. A calm voice on the other end spoke. "Preliminary intelligence confirms your team's operation has neutralized the immediate threat. Satellite feeds indicate no residual movement from the network. However, analysis suggests potential secondary cells may attempt reactivation within 48 to 72 hours. Quinn's response was immediate. "We expected that. Maintain surveillance, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Our priority is data capture, not confrontation. Every move they make will now be anticipated." By 12:00 p.m., the hub had transformed from a battlefield into a forensic lab. Operatives meticulously catalogued intercepted communications, secure evidence of payload handling, and encrypted devices. Each piece of recovered data was a puzzle piece, contributing to a broader intelligence mosaic. Kane's eyes were fixed on the drone feeds. "I've replayed the final convergence sequence multiple times," he said. "The coordination, the discipline, it's impressive, but it's also revealing. Micro-failures emerge when stress accumulates. They're predictable." Quinn allowed a slight nod. "Exactly. And that predictability is the most valuable outcome. Intelligence isn't just about who you catch, it's about understanding how they operate when under pressure, and then using that knowledge to anticipate and control future events." By 12:45 p.m., Quinn walked to the central observation deck overlooking the hub. The river shimmered in the early afternoon sun, masking the shadowed complexities of the night. Yet beneath the surface, the consequences of the convergence extended far beyond the immediate operational space. Ellis joined her, carrying a tablet with compiled metrics. "Initial projections indicate that secondary cells may attempt to regroup, but they'll be predictable based on stress markers and movement patterns we've already recorded." Quinn considered this silently. "We've turned reaction into anticipation. Every anomaly we observed, every decoy they deployed, has now become intelligence for the next operation. Their network may remain active, but it will operate under our terms, constrained and monitored." By 1:15 p.m., the debrief concluded. Teams were exhausted but methodical, documenting every insight, every observation, and every deviation from protocol. The hub, once a crucible of tension and danger, had become a repository of knowledge, an intelligence goldmine. Quinn finally allowed herself a measured exhale. The aftermath is as important as the operation itself. Never forget, success isn't just containment, it's control, understanding, and preparation for the next move. Today's operation is complete, but the intelligence we've gained ensures tomorrow we remain several steps ahead. Kane glanced at her, a subtle recognition in his eyes. We've done more than neutralize a threat. We've redefined the operational landscape. Any future attempts will be met not with reaction, but with preemptive mastery. Quinn's gaze returned to the river. Yes, and that is the true consequence, the hidden aftermath. The world outside may remain unaware, but we've transformed chaos into order, unpredictability into strategy, and danger into knowledge. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the hub, the team began the final phase, secure transport of the payload to headquarters, archival of all intercepted data, and silent observation of any residual activity. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and precisely documented. The operation was over, but its implications, hidden, complex, and far-reaching, were only just beginning to unfold. By 2 p.m. the hub was silent, yet within the meticulously collected data lay the seeds of control, the blueprint for future operations, and the assurance that the network they had faced would never again operate with impunity. The hidden consequences of the night's convergence were clear. Knowledge, anticipation, and preparation now reigned supreme. By 2:30 p.m. the hub had entered a state of quiet precision. The operation's adrenaline had faded, leaving a structured calm, almost surgical in its execution. Every operative, from the senior analysts to the field technicians, knew that the final phase was as critical as the confrontation itself. Closing the loop was more than securing evidence. It was ensuring the integrity of the entire operational chain, leaving no blind spots, and cementing lessons for future missions. Quinn moved to the main console, reviewing the final compilation of data. Satellite logs, drone footage, encrypted device contents, and real-time operative communications all converged into a digital lattice of intelligence. Every thread must be accounted for, she said. Any loose end is a potential vulnerability. Our work is only complete when nothing remains unexamined. Ellis, already cross-referencing the network data, chimed in. Preliminary analysis indicates that residual cells attempted minor adjustments to their routing. We intercepted 3 attempts at recommunication, but our preemptive tracking algorithms isolated and neutralized them before they could establish a foothold. Quinn's eyes narrowed, scanning the flow of metrics across multiple screens. Good. Document the timestamp of each intervention. We need a temporal map of all reactions. Understanding the sequence of adaptation is critical for predictive accuracy. By 3 p.m., the first stage of archiving was underway. Digital evidence was encrypted, catalogued, and redundantly stored across multiple secure servers. Each file was tagged with metadata, timestamp, operative ID, operational role, and any observed deviations from expected behavior. Every anomaly, no matter how small, was highlighted for forensic review. Kane approached, carrying a tablet displaying drone path overlays. I've mapped all movement patterns during the convergence. Even the micro-adjustments, the subtle shifts in positioning, the timing of handoffs, the stress-induced errors, they're all logged. Quinn nodded. Exactly. Those micro-adjustments are the fingerprint of operational stress. We can now simulate potential future scenarios with high fidelity. Every decision point, every reaction becomes part of our predictive framework. At 3:30 p.m., a secure conference call linked Quinn and her team with headquarters. Senior analysts, strategic commanders, and external observers participated, but the focus remained forensic, not speculative. Every move was reviewed, every decision justified with data. The loop was being closed not through rhetoric, but through evidence, timestamp by timestamp, sequence by sequence. Quinn spoke deliberately. Operation metrics indicate complete containment of the threat. But containment alone is insufficient. We must ensure continuity of oversight, anticipate secondary actions, and identify potential ripple effects. This is how we close the loop. Ellis highlighted an anomaly on the satellite overlay. There's a minor deviation in thermal signatures near the northern perimeter. It's subtle but detectable. Quinn examined it closely. Document the anomaly, but do not engage. We'll maintain silent observation. Closing the loop means understanding the network in its entirety, not just reacting to isolated spikes. Every anomaly is data, not a threat, unless verified. By 4 p.m., the team began a phased review of all operative performance metrics. Reaction times, stress markers, coordination efficiency, and micro-decision patterns were logged and analyzed. Each operative's contribution was evaluated against protocol expectations, highlighting deviations, improvisations, and tactical brilliance. Kane pointed to a graph of operative stress markers. Notice here, at 7:58 a.m., the payload handler adjusted his grip subtly. That micro-deviation correlates with decision latency in the supporting operative. These interactions define the network's response under pressure. Quinn's expression remained calm, almost clinical. Exactly. By understanding the interplay of stress and decision, we close the operational loop. The network's behavioral blueprint is now ours to analyze, anticipate, and if necessary, manipulate in future engagements. By 4:45 p.m., the final archive of intercepted communications, operative actions, and environmental logs was completed. Every file was verified against redundant checksums, every timestamp synchronized, every anomaly cross-referenced with operative reports. The loop was now formally closed. No data unaccounted for, no sequence unexplained, no potential misstep unexamined. Quinn moved to the observation deck once more, surveying the hub. "Today, we turned chaos into structure," she said softly. "Not by confrontation alone, but by rigorous analysis, precise documentation, and anticipation. The loop is closed, but the operational horizon remains dynamic. Our work doesn't end, it evolves." Ellis and Kane joined her, silent but attentive. "Every step we've taken," Quinn continued, "ensures that if the network attempts a resurgence, we see it, predict it, and neutralize it before it escalates. That is the essence of closing the loop. Complete situational mastery and strategic foresight." By 5:15 p.m., the hub began transitioning to a maintenance state. Operatives dismantled temporary stations, secured hardware, and logged final procedural notes. The riverbank outside shimmered under the late afternoon sun, mirroring the hub's calm exterior but hiding the intricate web of intelligence now secured within. Quinn's phone buzzed once again, a secure encrypted alert from Central Command. She glanced at it briefly, then tucked it away. "Alerts are only confirmation. The real loop is closed here, in our records, our analysis, and our foresight." By 5:45 p.m., the hub was silent, yet its operational footprint remained expansive. Every decision, every reaction, and every micro-movement had been captured. The network's operational DNA was now fully mapped, allowing the team not just to respond, but to preempt with precision. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the hub, Quinn's final words echoed through the room. Closing the loop is not the end. It's a commitment. A commitment to understanding, controlling, and anticipating. The night may have ended, but the operational continuum remains secure and fully understood. And that is how we ensure mastery over chaos.